Yangtze giant softshell turtle. There are 2, maybe 3 left. That's the entire species. The Yangtze giant softshell turtle is the largest freshwater turtle on Earth, reaching 1 meter long and over 100 kilograms, and it has existed for millions of years across the rivers of China and Vietnam. Researchers know of one female. She lives in Dong Mo Lake in Vietnam. For years, there was one confirmed male, living in a zoo in Suzhou, China. Artificial insemination attempts failed repeatedly. The Suzhou male died in 2019. A wild individual was confirmed in Dong Mo Lake in 2020, raising fragile hope that a second wild turtle might exist somewhere in the system. Habitat destruction, hunting, and river pollution across the Yangtze and Red River basins dismantled a population that had survived ice ages and mass extinctions. The search for a second wild individual is ongoing. 2 or 3 animals remain on a planet of 8 billion people, in rivers that have carried human civilization for thousands of years. The math is not forgiving. Vaquita. You're the smallest cetacean on Earth, and you live in one place. The Vaquita, a small porpoise found only in the northern Gulf of California, Mexico, reached an estimated population of around 10 individuals as of recent surveys. In 1997, there were around 600. The decline happened in under 30 years. You weren't hunted directly. You drowned in gill nets set illegally for the totaba fish, whose swim bladder sells for tens of thousands of dollars on the black market in China. Every net in the water is a potential death sentence. Conservation teams have patrolled the Vaquita's range for years, removing illegal gear, documenting survivors on camera traps. The individuals still alive appear healthy. They're still breeding. In 2021, a calf was photographed, the first confirmed newborn in years. Whether 10 animals is enough to pull a species back from functional extinction is a question marine biologists can't answer with certainty. The gill nets keep coming back. The Vaquita keeps disappearing. 10 animals. 1 body of water. No margin left. Hainan Gibbon. You're the rarest primate on Earth, and you live in a single forest. The Hainan Gibbon survives only in Bawangling National Nature Reserve on Hainan Island, China, in roughly 36 square kilometers of tropical forest. Around 35 individuals remain, organized into 5 family groups. You spend your entire life in the canopy, rarely descending to the ground, traveling between trees by swinging on arms that span over a meter. A century ago, tens of thousands of Hainan gibbons lived across the island. Deforestation cleared 95% of Hainan's original forest by the late 20th century, and hunting removed the rest of the population. The 35 individuals alive today are the survivors of a collapse that happened within living memory. Conservation teams have planted corridors of new vegetation to connect isolated forest patches, giving the remaining groups room to expand their range. The population has grown slowly from a low of around 10 in the 1970s. Slowly is the right word. One typhoon hitting the wrong 36 square kilometers ends everything. Javan Rhino. You're the rarest large mammal on Earth. Around 75 Javan rhinos survive, all of them inside a single national park, Ujung Kulon on the western tip of Java, Indonesia. You're a solitary animal, covering home ranges of 10 to 20 square kilometers through dense lowland rainforest, rarely seen even by the rangers who monitor you. Camera traps are how researchers know you exist at all. You're smaller than most rhino species, reaching around 1,400 kilograms, with a single horn that rarely exceeds 25 centimeters. Poaching for that horn drove your species to near zero across Vietnam and mainland Asia. The last Vietnamese Javan rhino was found dead in 2010 with its horn removed, leaving Ujung Kulon as the only population on Earth. The park itself sits in the shadow of Krakatoa. A major tsunami or volcanic event could eliminate the entire species in a single afternoon. Conservation teams have pushed for a second population to be established elsewhere as insurance. As of now, 75 animals, 1 park, 1 volcano. That's the margin. Sumatran Rhino. You're the smallest rhino alive and the only one covered in reddish-brown hair. Around 80 Sumatran rhinos survive across fragmented patches of forest in Sumatra, and a small population in Borneo scattered so widely that individuals rarely encounter each other. That isolation is the problem. You're a solitary animal with a long reproductive cycle. Females only breed every 4 to 5 years. When populations fragment below a critical threshold, females stop encountering males entirely, and the breeding rate collapses even before poaching takes its toll. Hunting for your double horn drove the historical decline. Deforestation destroyed the contiguous habitat that kept populations connected. Captive breeding programs have had limited success. Sumatran rhinos in captivity often fail to reproduce, partly due to a hormonal condition that develops when females go too long without mating. The wild population is so scattered that researchers use camera traps and footprint surveys to estimate numbers, and estimates carry wide uncertainty, around 80, possibly fewer. The number keeps moving in one direction. Addax. In the wild, you're nearly gone. The Addax once moved across the entire Sahara in herds of thousands, a pale, spiral-horned antelope built for one of the harshest environments on Earth. Your broad hooves spread your weight across sand. Your coat reflects heat. You extract almost all the moisture you need from the sparse vegetation you graze. You survived the Sahara for thousands of years. You couldn't survive the 20th century. Unregulated hunting, military vehicles enabling access to previously unreachable desert, and civil instability across the Sahel collapsed the wild population to fewer than 100 individuals, possibly far fewer. The last confirmed stronghold is in the Termit and Tintoma National Nature and Cultural Reserve in Niger. Surveys are difficult and dangerous. Population estimates carry high uncertainty. In captivity, the situation is different. Tens of thousands of addax live in zoos and private reserves worldwide, enough to sustain the species genetically. But wild addax, animals living in the Sahara the way they evolved to live, number in the dozens. The desert outlasted them. Saola. Most scientists have never seen one. The Saola was discovered in 1992 in the Annamite Mountains on the Vietnam-Laos border, and it remains one of the least studied large mammals on Earth. It resembles a forest antelope, with two long parallel horns reaching up to 50 centimeters, but it's not closely related to any other living species. It belongs to its own genus. Camera traps have caught it fewer than a handful of times since its discovery. No Saola has ever been held successfully in captivity. Population estimates are guesses, fewer than 100 almost certainly, possibly far fewer. The primary threat isn't habitat destruction, though that's a factor. It's snares. Tens of thousands of wire snares blanket the forest floors of the Annamite Range, set by hunters targeting deer and other animals. Saola walk into them by accident. Conservation teams have cleared hundreds of thousands of snares from the region, but the forests are vast and the teams are small. The Saola may disappear before science fully understands what it is. Amur Leopard. You're the rarest big cat on Earth. Around 120 to 150 Amur leopards survive in the temperate forests along the Russia-China border, in a range that covers roughly 7,000 square kilometers of mixed forest in Primorsky Krai, Russia. You're larger and paler than other leopard subspecies, with a thick, spotted coat adapted to winters that drop below minus 30 degrees Celsius. You hunt roe deer, sika deer, and hares across home ranges that can stretch 100 square kilometers for males. The population hit a low of around 30 individuals in the early 2000s, before anti-poaching efforts, habitat protection, and a dedicated national park established in 2012 began to stabilize numbers. Recovery has been real. The population has roughly tripled in 20 years, but 150 animals spread across a single connected landscape represents almost no genetic buffer against disease, inbreeding, or a single catastrophic event. The Amur leopard is recovering. Recovering is not the same as safe. Togo slippery frog. You live in one waterfall. The Togo slippery frog, Conrawa dirui, is found only in fast-flowing streams and waterfalls in the Togo hills of Ghana and Togo, in a range so small it fits inside a few square kilometers of highland forest. Population estimates range from 100 to 150 individuals, though surveys are difficult in fast-moving water and the number carries significant uncertainty. You're a large frog by West African standards, reaching up to 9 centimeters, and you cling to wet rocks and torrential currents using specialized grip. Your habitat is disappearing. Agricultural expansion is clearing the forest around your streams. Sedimentation from farming is silting up the clear, fast water you need to breed. The chytrid fungus that has wiped out amphibian populations across the globe has not yet been confirmed in your range, but it has devastated frogs across West Africa. Your entire species exists in a handful of waterfalls. There is no backup population. There is no alternative habitat. There is just the water and whatever comes for it next. Cross-river gorilla. Around 250 to 300 cross-river gorillas survive in a cluster of fragmented forest patches along the Nigeria-Cameroon border, split across 11 isolated subpopulations that rarely interact. You're a subspecies of western gorilla, physically similar but behaviorally distinct, notably shy of humans in a way that other gorilla populations aren't. Researchers believe this is learned. Cross-river gorillas have been hunted for so long that wariness of people is now encoded in the culture of surviving groups. You live in steep, rugged terrain that has slowed deforestation compared to lowland areas, but farming communities continue to clear forest at the edges of your range. Bushmeat hunting remains a threat despite legal protections. The fragmentation is the deeper problem. Subpopulations too small and too isolated to interbreed accumulate genetic problems over generations. Conservation corridors between forest patches are being developed, but slowly. 250 animals, 11 groups, a border between two countries running through the middle of your last forest. Kakapo. You're the world's heaviest parrot, and you can't fly. The kakapo reaches up to 4 kilograms, walks on the forest floor, and is strictly nocturnal. You're also one of the longest-lived birds on Earth, reaching 90 years or more. Around 250 kakapo survive, every single one of them named, tracked, and monitored individually by the New Zealand Department of Conservation on a handful of predator-free offshore islands. You went functionally extinct on New Zealand's main islands after Polynesian, and then European settlers introduced rats, stoats, and cats, all of which either ate your eggs or hunted you directly. By the 1990s, fewer than 50 remained. The recovery program has been intensive and expensive. Breeding seasons are unpredictable because you only breed in years when remu trees produce heavy fruit, sometimes 2 to 4 years apart. Every egg matters. Conservation staff hand-rear chicks, supplement food, and relocate individuals between islands to manage genetics. The population has grown from 51 in 1995 to around 250. Today, every one of those 250 has a name. You know exactly who you're losing when one of them dies. Ploughshare Tortoise. You live in one place and you're being stolen from it. The Ploughshare Tortoise, found only in a small area of dry deciduous forest in northwestern Madagascar, is one of the most trafficked reptiles on Earth. Its domed golden shell is so distinctive and so coveted in the illegal exotic pet trade that collectors pay thousands of dollars per animal. Wild population estimates have dropped sharply over recent decades and now number in the low hundreds, though precise counts are difficult. The Dural Wildlife Conservation Trust has run a captive breeding program at Ampigiroa since the 1980s and releases juveniles back into the wild. But poaching pressure has intensified faster than breeding programs can compensate. Conservation teams have tried acid etching identification numbers into the shells of wild individuals to reduce their black market value. Poachers now remove the etched sections of shell. The forest the Ploughshare Tortoise depends on is also being cleared for charcoal production. It's losing its habitat and being taken from what remains of it simultaneously. The numbers reflect that. Philippine Eagle. You're the national bird of the Philippines and one of the largest eagles on Earth. The Philippine Eagle reaches 1 meter tall with a wingspan of 2 meters and weighs up to 8 kilograms. Hunting, monkeys, flying lemurs, and large bats across old-growth forest in Mindanao, Leyte, Samar, and Luzon. Only a few hundred breeding pairs remain. Your range has contracted sharply as lowland forest across the Philippine archipelago has been cleared for agriculture and logging. You need large, contiguous, old-growth forests to survive. Each breeding pair requires roughly 100 square kilometers of intact canopy. As forest fragments shrink below that threshold, pairs stop reproducing. Killing a Philippine eagle carries a 12-year prison sentence under Philippine law, but shooting still occurs, particularly in agricultural areas where eagles prey on livestock. The captive breeding program at the Philippine Eagle Center in Davao has had limited success. You mature slowly, breed once every 2 years, and raise a single chick per cycle. Recovery is biologically constrained. Every pair lost is 2 years of ground you can't get back faster than the trees are being cut. Tapanuli Orangutan. You're the most endangered great ape on Earth, and you were only identified as a distinct species in 2017. The Tapanuli Orangutan, Pongo tapanuliensis, lives in the Batang Toru Forest in North Sumatra, Indonesia, in a range covering roughly 1,000 square kilometers across 3 fragmented blocks. Around 800 individuals survive. You're genetically distinct from both Sumatran and Bornean orangutans, the product of an ancient population that separated over 10,000 years ago and evolved in isolation in these highlands. Your discovery made immediate headlines. So did the threat. A hydroelectric dam project in the Batang Toru watershed would flood core habitat and fragment the already divided forest blocks further. The dam has proceeded despite conservation opposition. You have a slower reproductive rate than almost any other mammal. Females give birth once every 8 to 9 years. With 800 animals and a birth rate that's slow, there's almost no biological cushion against habitat loss. You were named a species and placed on the critical list in the same decade, African wild ass. You're the ancestor of every domestic donkey on Earth, and you're nearly gone. Around 200 mature African wild asses survive in the wild, scattered across the arid lowlands of Eritrea, Ethiopia, and possibly small areas of Somalia and Djibouti. You're one of the rarest large mammals in the world, and one of the least discussed. You reach 125 centimeters at the shoulder, with a gray coat, striped legs, and a tolerance for heat and dehydration that lets you survive in terrain that would kill most animals. Hunting for food and traditional medicine has driven your decline across the Horn of Africa. Competition with domestic livestock for scarce water and grazing has compounded it. Hybridization with feral domestic donkeys is diluting the wild gene pool. Of the approximately 200 remaining, the proportion that are genetically pure wild asses is uncertain. Captive populations exist in zoos across Europe and the Middle East. But wild individuals, animals living as wild asses, evolved to live across the desert, are functionally on the edge. The domestic donkey replaced you everywhere. You're still out there in the original version, barely.